With shelter, it's all about location. And when you're looking for a shelter location, you want to find an area that is close to resources. So you don't want to be walking a long distance in order to gather materials to build your shelter. So first you need to look for materials in your local area to construct it. And you also want to pay attention to kind of danger areas. You don't want to be in an area that is a high wind area. You don't want to place your shelter under a widowmaker, which is essentially a dead tree that might fall over in the night under high winds. You also don't want to place it near a game trail where there might be dangerous animals such as, bears or mountain lions. So when you choose a location, you tend to want to build it on the south side so that you can get that kind of warming sun. If you were to place a shelter on like the north side of a ridge for a winter shelter, that wouldn't be good because it would be much colder on that side of the mountain. And you also want to have an abundance of firewood. Shelter, water, and fire all go together. So you don't want to have to be walking a mile to your water source, and you don't want to have to be dragging your firewood over long distances in order to, get your fire going good. That can really burn your calories, and survival is all about calories, guys. If you're burning more calories than you're bringing in over the long term, then that could be a big time negative over the long-term survival situation. So one of the key things to remember when building a lean-to is that you want to place it in an area that has got wind protection. Preferably you've got overhead cover, such as we built this one right underneath a cedar tree. And cedar trees have a lot of limbs that, kind of cover you from the rain. So if you can find a location and a tree that is in a flat area so that you can, lay comfortably and has that good overhead cover, you can tend to kind of skimp on how much debris you have to use. And if you notice, the way that we built this was first I start with a crossbar and it's tied over here, and over here I just run it into a limb so that I don't really have to use much cordage or any at all. And on this side, you don't have to tie it up off the ground like this. You can run it straight into the ground, but it's just a little bit more comfortable when you're turning over throughout the night. Your feet aren't going to be bumping up against the ribs. And to my left, we've built a vestibule, which is kind of a luxury item, but survival is about psychology. If you can do something in order to improve your overall mood, comfort level, and how well you sleep, it's probably a good investment for you. So the vestibule is used to protect your gear, protect you from the prevailing winds, and our prevailing winds here come out of the northwest, and our shelter is facing south and east so that we can kind of get that sun that pops up in the morning that's going to keep us warmer. And after we get our base, kind of frame up here, then we're going to add our ribs. And these ribs are of different length all the way down, and we taper our shelter, and you want to build it according to your own size. So if you're a shorter person, you don't want to build a real long shelter. That's just going to burn up more calories and energy. We place our ribs in, we cut them off flush so that it doesn't become a rain catch that ends up running down here and pooling in front. And then we cover it with cedar boughs all the way around to prevent the leaves from falling into your shelter. And then after you get your boughs over the top, and you can use a lot of different things, you can use vines or anything to just kind of cover the cracks. And the ribs only have a few inches of space in between them, and then we cover the top with a minimum of about a foot of debris. Now, if you're carrying a poncho, that's a way that you can cheat, but you don't necessarily want to put a poncho shelter up, directly next to a fire, because the embers will end up popping and putting holes into it. So when you build a lean-to like this, if you plan to use that cheat method, cover it with a light sprinkling of leaves first and then cover your poncho over the top. But it's really not necessary. I prefer to have a larger layer of leaves because that provides insulation. And modern shelters really can't do what primitive shelters can. Just because there's so much dead airspace here and so much insulation, and I can have a large fire next to this, a tent, hammock, or tarp shelter really can't reproduce what a primitive shelter does on the insulation side. For our bedding, we have just a large log here in order to keep our leaves in, and we've got approximately about 12 inches deep of leaves for us to lay on. And that's important because we don't want cold to, via conduction to, suck that heat out of our body. And so we put about 12 inches in here, and we have a frame on both sides, and it's almost like survival memory foam. That's kind of what we nicknamed it. And it's extremely comfortable. It insulates you better than almost any mat that you could buy in a store. And, it's just really a great option when you're in a primitive setting and building one of these types of survival shelters. So the average lean-to takes anywhere from an hour and a half upwards of 2 hours to build. And it's very important that you carry your tools with you. You've got to always have your EDC, your knife, your saw, and that's going to really speed the process up. If you don't have tools, you can break these limbs to length by finding two trees that are somewhat close together and placing it and using it like a lever bar and snapping those off. And I can't say enough about the lean-to. It's just one of the most popular shelters out there, and I totally recommend that all you guys go out there and get some dirt time. Try this out without a sleeping bag. Build yourself a long fire just like this one. This is essentially a keyhole fire, and so it's round here, and then there's rocks lining it all the way down on both sides. And the point of that is to limit how much firewood we have to cut. So instead of, cutting things to length like you would throw, in your fireplace, we're just going to cut 10-foot logs and stack them maybe 4, 5, 6 deep. And every time it burns up here in our center hole, then, we just scoot the logs forward. Now, if you feel like you need more heat than that, you can actually let the entire length burn, and it will heat the entire length of your body. Now, one of the major complaints about a lean-to is that you cook on the fire side and you're freezing on your backside. So we can take hot rocks, same as around our fire here, and make sure that you don't collect hot rocks from a creek because they can actually explode if they have any kind of moisture or water in them, and they can actually be dangerous. I've had it happen to me several times. But as long as you have dry rocks, you can heat these up on the edge of your fire, get them to where they're hot enough to where you can still pick them up, and then you can put them between your legs, under your arms, and line your back. And the reason that you put them under your arms and between your legs is it's close to your blood flow. And that will really improve, especially if you don't have a sleeping bag, your overall comfort level, because when you've got a long fire like this and you mix it with those hot rocks, you're sure to have a really good night's sleep.